brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. Now, today I have a special guest, a returning guest. She was gracious enough to join me early on. She didn't even know who I was. She is the executive director and founder of the STEM Greenhouse. It's a nonprofit that does after school programming, summer academies, and much more. But also, she's an advocate of Black founded nonprofits, and we'll get into that a bit more in a bit. Dr. Keli Christopher. Dr. Keli, welcome back to Baxter's Buzz.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, we wanted to talk about uh, contributors to Black history, and I always think it's nice to mix it up because there's so many folks to choose
Right.
from, but we can sometimes get in the habit of like going with like the same old, right? I mean, even my first grader and fourth grader, you know, the stuff that they're writing, the stuff that it's like, okay, we've heard about this, you know. But
Um,
you had an idea that I thought was interesting, where we would take a figure that we all kind of hear about in February of no other month, but then sort of take a different vantage point on it. So the person that we're talking about is Martin Luther King Jr., but we're looking at one of his quotes specifically, and we're gonna kind of peel the layers back on that. So thank you for bringing that unique sort of perspective on someone that we may feel like we know, but we still have a lot to learn about him as well.
yeah, I think that generally in history only sees what they want to see. You know what I mean? We don't get the full context of everything that person believed because we just edit. The historians edit what that so MLK has been edited by historians. That's just the reality, and so we don't know the full breadth of what he believed in, just because we don't get a full picture of it.
Yeah, and just like most people, we got layers to us, and for someone so famous, it's like it has to fit into our vision, the these tiny sound bites and sort of the message that we are trying to communicate, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
he was much more than the I have a dream
Exactly.
speaker, right?
Yeah, he gave so many speeches, but every quote comes from like that one speech, because, like you said, that's the message that his history wants to present. And so, yeah, I thought it would be kind of neat to look at a couple of some quotes that he had that were just maybe we didn't really dissect as much.
Yeah, and one that resonates with you, and myself, but specifically you because of the work that you do every day. Let me just read it, and then we can kind of jump into it. So, philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice, which make philanthropy necessary.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And, I think finally we're sort of coming to terms with this that, okay, there's a reason that there's so much inequity. It's an inequitable system. And then the people at the top with all the power and all the resources of the 99%, turn around and like, oh, let me see for you, the rest of you, how I'm going to parse out my, here's 5% of my riches and wealth and everything. And make you we have to jump through hoops to get your little 5% of you have so much abundance and excess. But why is that? Were you able to amass that wealth by doing things that were not that maybe were inhumane, that were unethical. Were you taking advantage of people and they're with lower wages and whatnot so that you could amass wealth? So yeah, there's a lot of pieces that that I found going through as a nonprofit, seeking resources from organizations. And even though, a lot of times the people on the ground have all the expertise, the people who give out the money tell us what we're supposed to do. If you want this money, you have to do this. If you want this money, we need you to do that. And those of us who are on the ground are sitting around like, wow, this is crazy, that they are not even really recognizing that the reason that they have this wealth is not because they know more than us. It's just, they've just been blessed to be in that position to have that wealth.
And if you want to contribute and make an impact, truly, maybe this foundation, or not this foundation, but maybe this nonprofit that you are contributing to, maybe they got it figured out. Maybe they know a little bit more about this than you do. And I know that things have to check certain boxes, especially when you talk about these larger foundations or these donors. They have to sort of fit inside of this box, but I think we need to bust those boxes open.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of times nonprofits are put in a position when you're in a powerless position, you just tend to, okay, whatever you want, so for example, a really large foundation, they told me, well, we only give money for early childhood education. And that they're not alone. There's a lot of organizations that only want to support young children. But I have to come back at them and say, why won't you support a middle school student or a high school student? Is it because they look so cute when they're 3 years old and 5 years old and all your pictures, and you're willing to give to Black children when they're little, but when they're 12 years old, now they're a threat? And you can't, I've had, there was an organization, they donate food to kids after school. We stopped giving in the 6th grade. Why? Like, this makes no sense. We just don't support middle and high school kids. They eat more than anybody. So why can't I, but you're not going to, you only give to little kids. But again, that's that mentality. These are generally white people. And well, we don't have enough for everybody. So we're only going to do the little kids. Is that really why? You have to start asking yourself, why are these systems in place? There's no logical reason that you can't feed a child that's 12, 13 years old. This is just this is your mindset, your beliefs. And, like I said, this has happened to me so many times. Like, I can't tell you how many foundations only like little kids, but the reality is they're afraid of the Black teenager. And they're not as cute. They don't want to put them on their website. So, but most organizations won't even challenge them on that. They'll just say, okay, I guess we just won't support middle and high school students. We'll only support little kids, or they'll say, well, we stop in the 3rd grade. We don't support over 3rd grade. Why? This makes no sense.
Yeah. When we, my friends and I started our nonprofit in 2020, Catalyst for Change, we had a number of things that we wanted to accomplish. And we knew a few folks who were part of like the donor world, the foundation world. And we got some really interesting feedback, and we were victims to it as well, Dr. Keli, where they said, well, have you thought about this, or have you, and they were taking sort of our vision and trying to help, right? But really changing our purpose.
Exactly. Well, see, and that is one of the problems. And I've had this too. I've had people of color come to me and say, well, Kelly, why don't you work with the white organization? They'll give the white organization the money and then you can like sub. No, I should be able to, I'm the expert. I should be able to go to that foundation and get money. I shouldn't have to go through a white organization to get resources. I shouldn't have to change my mission to get resources. These people don't even know, if you have never educated a Black child, you've never been a Black child, you don't know what that Black child needs. How are you going to tell me, well, I'm only going to support this sort of thing? Or, it's so annoying. But unfortunately, most people that are in nonprofits don't push back. And that's one of the reasons also that Black nonprofits suffer, because, we may not have a big donor that gets us started with $1 million donation. We're working on teeny little dollar amounts. And, again, the way that philanthropy philanthropy works is generally it's white people giving money to white people to fix Black and brown people. Mm. And then nothing changes. In Grand Rapids, there's an organization that has measured the outcomes for all the races and stuff, like in health and economy and stuff. Nothing has changed for Black and brown people in my community in the last 10 years. And millions of dollars have been poured into this community, but they're pouring it into the same organizations. And even the state of Michigan, the government funding, I was talking to some people that work for state government, because my programming does not get funded by the state. But there are certain reasons why. So, for example, they prioritize organizations that have a child care license. Why? Okay, this is an after-school program for middle school and high school kids, and we do this programming in the schools that they're in. The school doesn't have a child care license. Why are you so basically all the money ends up going to the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, these white savior organizations. They're not designed to educate kids. So you want learning outcomes. I said, keep funding that, because you're going to keep getting the same outcomes. If you're funding the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm not, that's not a horrible organization or anything, but what you're funding is open gym. Okay. You're not funding the math and science that they need to learn, because the people there, that's not what that organization has been designed to do.
Right.
So, but I said, that's fine. If just go out and say, this is not about learning. This is about recreation, and go ahead and give your grant. But don't say that you want kids to learn and only fund organizations that are offering sports after school.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a need for it all, right? Yes. There's a need for a safe space. And working at the Boys and Girls Club, I know you were just using them as an example, but I got to defend them a little bit, right? Because the children need a safe space to go to, but yeah, that's not.
Well, let me put it this way: in Grand Rapids, there have been multiple Black people who have tried to start after school recreational centers for children to have a safe space. They never get any support. And meanwhile, white people will come in. Now, have you ever seen Black people go into a white community and build a community center and start mentoring little white kids? It's ridiculous, but that's what white people do to us. And then they expect us to thank them for it. And we have such a mindset that only white people know how to manage buildings and resources. So we couldn't possibly give that money to, like, these were Black people with Ph.D s, college professors. It didn't matter. We won't give you the money. We would rather give it to some white social workers who will come and give them a safe space. Why can't we provide the safe space? Right. Why can't that be our safe space? Why do we have to depend on organizations that are where white people are in charge, where white people have all the control, in order for our kids to be mentored?
Yeah, no,
the same amount of resources should be given to people of color to have their own community centers in their communities.
That's right. That's right. I was fortunate enough to be asked to go into one of the elementary schools where I grew up this week, and the principal at the elementary school, we grew up together, and she said, a white woman, she said, "Baxter, this is so important because everybody that they see, for the most part, in this building are white women. You know,
Mhm.
they need to see Black people um doing things, you know.
Exactly. Well, in research has shown that all children learn best from someone who is similar in a similar demographic group, meaning a white female will learn best from a white female, a Black male will learn best from a Black male. If 85% of the teachers are white female, is it any surprise that Black males have the lowest achievement outcomes in academics? We're not giving them an equal footing. So in the work I do, so for example, in my summer academy, we have 50 students, 5 Black male teachers. In the Grand Rapids public schools, there's 14,000 students, 14 Black male teachers. Only 5% of Black students in Kent County are proficient in math. The work that I do, like in my summer academy, the average student, they improve 2 grade levels in math computations in the 5 weeks of the program. 2 grade levels.
Wow.
Don't you see how much more powerful it would be to empower people of color to educate and serve their own people?
Yeah.
But because we are just inherently racist, even Black people don't think Black people can get money. I'll be talking to Black people at these organizations, and they're afraid to give me money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't think that we can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, there's no risk, or we certainly cannot do as bad of a job as the system that is set up right now.
Right. When you talk about measuring impact and no real tangible improvement has been made,
Millions of dollars just
then
wasted.
try something. Yeah, try something else. Try something else. So I'm looking at this quote, and there's a piece really speaks to what we've been talking about. But it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of injustice, which make philanthropy necessary, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
How when you hear that piece, the like what comes to mind, and just
Well,
yeah.
I could just imagine Martin Luther King Jr., because he's talking to a lot of wealthy white people, and they really do want to help. But at the same time, they're not always willing to, like he said, okay, what are the circumstances that cause the injustice? I think that a lot of times people just, I know in their logical mind, they don't think it. But if you have these discrepancies, these big, okay, the white students have this and the Black students have this, white students are achieving here, Black students are achieving here. The reason they're not achieving in their mind really is just that they think these kids are inferior. Now, they won't say it out loud, but the reality is, oh, we expect the Black children to do worse. But why is that? Why that discrepancy is our fault? Okay. It's not the kids' fault. These children are not inferior. Now, there may be some situations that we can't do everything for every child, but there's a lot that we can do. And I really wish that instead of us just twiddling our thumbs, okay, well, we're going to do a 5-year research project to see if, this classroom of kids gets better. What if we just invested in people who are already doing good work? People who are like, I tell folks, I can't believe I've been able to make the impact I've been able to make on the little bitty money and resources that I've had at my disposal. It's because I'm just, I have a Ph.D. in engineering. I know what is needed for a child to do well in a STEM career. But most people who are doing STEM, they're not people of color, or they're not engineers or scientists. Like, how can you come into a school and talk to a Black child and say, become an engineer, when you've never done the work yourself? You know what I mean? It means something coming from somebody who's actually done it. My students see me and they know that they can do what I did because I'm no different than, them.
Right.
You have to see that, and it's important. So for people to not recognize that, and I was in my situation with philanthropy, there was specific money for STEM for children of color, and I was not given that money. The money went to white social workers. Even though I have a PhD in engineering and I'm a Black woman, this money is for STEM education for children of color. The money is still going to white organizations that are not even STEM organizations. Why is that? Because our system is set up. So, for example, in this particular grant, these organizations were outscoring me on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, why? Well, that's because they took a diversity training and I didn't. I told them I could have given the diversity training. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is, I told the foundation, because again, you have to just challenge the foundation. I said, listen, you're not expecting people of color to even ask for money. So instead of giving points and scoring high for someone's lived experience as a person of color, you're scoring for diversity training. So somebody's hour and a half of diversity training, my whole life of trying to get a Ph.D. in a field dominated by white men, but you think they know what they're doing, and then you keep funding that, and guess what? No results. Year after year, no results, and you just sit around. Next time around, you give them some more money. It doesn't make any sense. But that's why nothing is changing. And that's part of the things. Why like that quote says, what are the circumstances that led to the injustice in the first place?
Right.
And part of it is to see your own piece in that too. Philanthropy has to see, okay, we're part of the problem too. They think they're just helping all the time, but they're starting to realize, wow, our giving has actually increased inequity. That's the reality.
So, and I know that you are probably more outspoken than most in this field. And I know that it's probably, I mean, maybe at one point, I don't know how apprehensive you get these days. I'm sure at some point at the beginning, you were more apprehensive when you kind of were starting to examine and fundraise and try to figure out what you needed to really make an impact with these children, and you were having these meetings and getting in front of these potential donors. What changed for you when you decided to say, I'm going to push back a bit more, I'm going to challenge them a bit more, I'm going to try to give them my perspective, because they probably haven't heard it?
Exactly. Well, part of it is, and I will just tell you, because when I first started kind of challenging the system, people of color came to me and said, Keli, you don't want to be perceived as the angry Black woman. If you do this, you might lose out on some opportunities. You don't, I mean, and these people cared about me, but but Black people, successful people of color, have been able to become successful by not threatening the white power structure, by only making minor little, incremental tiny changes that keep everybody comfortable, not being willing to have difficult conversations. And so really what happened, and it was, partly after sometimes I'd be denied for grants and things. And actually, in the case of this particular situation with the United Way, where we had this interchange about the diversity and not getting credit for lived experience, they had raised money using videos of me. They had me in their capital campaign. They didn't get permission to use these videos, but they used money. They used me. And when I say they used me, I was the main person talking in these videos. So at the end, I was like, you could take me off of your YouTube channel and your website, helping you raise money. But when I try to ask for the money, I'm not qualified to get it. But because, again, they want to put the people of color out there. They want to put Black children out there. They want people to see that on their website. But behind the scenes, all the people that are getting the money are white. And it's not, and they might be well-meaning white people, but it doesn't make it fair. And so really, what really changed for me was the whole George Floyd thing. And I just said, these people they don't care about us. They say they do, because after that, everybody was all, we're supportive of, Black people, and diversity is at the core of our organization. And I said, no, where's the money? So me and a friend who was a Latina, we started looking through their tax returns, or, when they file taxes. All nonprofits and foundations have to file their taxes. And we found that among all the top foundations, 96% of the money was going to white organizations. 4% was going to Black, brown, yellow, red. We all fighting for 4%. The majority of the money is going to the same hands. But I told them, if you go to your website, you would think all you do is give people of color money, because that's all you show on your website. Your marketing does not reflect who you're giving the money to. And believe me, they were mad at first, okay? They hated me. I even gave a talk at a conference about why you shouldn't give money to these, local philanthropy like the United Way, these community foundations. Basically, I was saying, I don't care if you ever give me any money. You know what I mean? Because I'm just going to expose you in all your dirt. But it started making a change because they still didn't want that bad publicity. And internally, they were starting to wonder, okay, maybe we do need to make some changes. There are people of color in these organizations. Sure. They thought they were doing fine because there are Black people been working there 30 years, still won't give money to Black people. Yeah. How is this? It makes no sense. But once again, so if nobody challenges them, I challenge them because one, like when you're at rock bottom, I didn't have any money anyway. I didn't have anything to lose. Like I was going to say, what are they going to do? Stop giving me money? They haven't given me anything. So I might as well just put it out there. But as I did that, other Black foundations, Black organizations, Black nonprofits started reaching out to me like, wow, this happens to me too. Every time I do that, they want me to change things. They want me to do things their way. They think, and then that's just to get a little bit of money. All this work for $5,000, these Black people they have to work full-time jobs. They can't even dedicate themselves to their cause because they get so little donations. Yeah. And even myself, I just, ask people to support Black nonprofits during Black History Month, because even an organization like mine that's been around for almost a decade, last year I had 56 donors, individuals. Mm. I can't sustain a nonprofit. This is why Black nonprofits aren't successful, but people will give to, this organization, they provide meals for the homeless. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But at some point, we got to do more than just provide meals. We're going to have to start educating kids so that they can get themselves out of poverty. Right. But we don't want to address those structural problems in schools. So, for example, I work in schools that don't have science teachers, middle schools, high schools. Their math instruction is horrible. Our organization now is teaching science during the school day to all the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at 3 middle schools. Wow. The school district has given me $10,000. Now this just doesn't make any sense, right? So I have to go around begging so that these kids have a science instruction, because right now all they have is a video subscription. The kids watch videos for science, and they're in middle school. Wow. This makes no sense. Who learns from a bunch of videos? They could do that themselves just going on YouTube. Right. What if you have a question? Nobody to answer your question. No science teacher, just a computer lab, and you put on the headphones and watch videos. And that's good enough for these Black kids. But would it be good enough for their kids? No, it's not. So, So now that also meant that I had to kind of expose the school district too. And that put me in a interesting position with them. They don't want people to know that they don't have science teachers. They don't want to know that Black and brown children, they're not doing well in math, but it's not only because, they're stupid. They don't have the instructors. They don't have any supplies. We're bringing in microscopes. We're bringing in the things that they can use to dissect. Why? Why should we have to do that? Well, if you don't have any science teacher, what's the point in having microscopes? What's the point in doing dissections? Right.
Oh, wow. I can't believe that they don't have teachers.
I said, this is in the 21st century, not having a science education really puts you behind. Okay. How are you going to be ready for college? This type of inequity, unfortunately, we have school districts and systems who just don't want the world to know how bad it is. So they just don't say it. So if I just, I'll be upfront, I'll say, listen, only 5% of the Black students in our whole county are proficient in math. That should be enough for people to start doing something different. Not just say, well, guess we need to get more teachers. They ain't coming. You know what I'm saying? Until you get the teachers back up to where they used to be, there's not any teachers. We need to do something different. I'm not a teacher. I'm an engineer, but I can teach science. I can teach math. We need to get creative about how we go about making sure that all children have access to a quality math and science education.
That's right.
We can't just keep waiting for, who are we waiting for? It's been 20 years.
If we examine the money that, the money my wife and I spend at home, or if we spend it, on the kids or on cable or whatever subscriptions we have, folks do that privately. If I'm a CEO of a company and I looking at my budget and where my expenses, I was sitting in the board meeting this week. We looked at profit and loss statements, right? We said, okay, well, why is this so high? Why was this so much higher than it was last year? Right? I mean, everyone's examining these things. We have objectives. If you continue to put this money in here, if you continue to put this money in the same spot and you're not getting the ROI, no other place in any other place in your life would you allow this to continue in the same way.
No, but for some reason with education, we do that. We just say, well, like they'll say, we only certified teachers can teach. And I say, well, you know what? So look, I looked at the laws. And as long as a certified teacher is in the room, we can come in there with a scientist who will teach science. Okay. But unfortunately, most people are not creative that way. They just sit, I talked to one of the school districts there, CFO, and I said, because they do have science teachers, but they're always at the schools with the most white children. And I asked him, why aren't these teachers at the urban schools? And he says, that's because they don't want to work there. And we can't force them to work there. They'll just get another job. And I said, well, that's why you need to, I said, part of that is because you're not paying them enough. Working with children who are basically traumatized from poverty is hard. It's not the same, kids, it's not when you have a child who doesn't have their food, they don't have lights, they don't have everything they need at home. They act a different way sometimes. We need to compensate these people who are willing to work with these children. And they said, well, we can't. Our union agreements say that we have to pay everybody the same. And I say, well, why don't you partner with my organization? Because I can pay them a stipend, a bonus for staying at this urban school. And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess you can. But they don't think like that.
Yeah.
It's like you have to, again, we have to do different things. Nobody wants to do the different thing. Everybody's waiting for somebody else to be successful and have a 10-year track record, before they're willing to invest in it.
Yeah.
So, I'm all about pushing the boundaries. Like, I'm going to make a way. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is sort of funny though, because most people are not used to people challenging the system. They're like,
well, kudos to you. Your passion is evident. And again, when you're starting at the bottom, what do you have to lose? But it sounds like you're starting to see some fruits of all this hard work and this advocacy that you've been doing. Speaking of, February is Black History Month. You are clearly working, you and your organization working towards educating and providing resources for like the next contributors of Black history, and I salute you for that. But I also got to give you a little love and a little credit, talking about, because you kind of, you're making your own history. You've already made your own history. So Dr. Keli Christopher is the third Black woman in the world. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong now.
That's sad truth.
Third Black woman in the world to earn a Ph.D. in agricultural engineering.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. So so these spaces are so.
Wait a second. Wait. Just let me just read this again. Third Black woman in the world. PhD in agricultural engineering. Yep. That's amazing.
Yeah. When I started graduate school, I could count the Black men on one hand. There's just not a lot of us. And the reality is that the world is getting more Black and brown. Ever since 2014, there have been more children of color than white children in America's schools. So if that's the case, we're not very far from being in a situation where there are just the minority is the majority. if we are only worried about the education of white children in their schools, we're going to be in trouble. We're not going to have all the people we need to remain competitive as a country. So this is something that businesses have to invest in for their own sustainability. They already can't find enough people to work there. They got to scour the whole earth to find engineers, scientists, medical doctors. It's time to start educating children of color, giving them the same resources that we want for our kids. Poor kids need the same resources. And so, yeah, it is, when I was getting my PhD, and of course, you're going to experience a lot of racism. But it's funny that the challenge that was getting a PhD it's like I'm fighting the same systems now. But it has also, I told people, it's like, you're working out that muscle, that challenging muscle. I'm going to challenge the way things are constantly. And so the work I do now, surprisingly, I mean, it's sort of like when I was getting my PhD, every time I take a new class, people don't think I deserve to be there. I have to prove myself. So now I'm in philanthropy. People think, well, why are you coming to me? I have to prove myself. I have to, it's that work, and the challenge of being in that situation has prepared me for the work I do now.
Yeah, you've definitely been building up that muscle memory for sure.
Right.
Doesn't sound like you slowing down either. She is the executive director and founder of STEM Greenhouse, an advocate of Black founded nonprofits, an advocate of just equitable, like equity,
Yes.
overall,
Yeah.
I would say, and a continuing contributor of Black history. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the work that STEM Greenhouse does, and just kudos and for everyone that's in a similar situation or find themselves with similar frustrations. No, it won't be easy, but it can get done. And I know that you're seeing fruits of that labor. And I would encourage other folks who are watching us or listening to this to continue on and continue to fight for our children, our community, and our future.
Yeah. Thank you.
So on behalf of Dr. Keli, I am Baxter E. Hall. This has been a great episode. And for those out there, just know that you are definitely capable. Just continue and embrace your own frequency. So until next time, peace.
All right. Bye-bye.
Welcome into his brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic Black history. This real rap.